Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Meditation and Spiritual Practice, our weekly Tuesday morning offering. And want to offer one of the things that some of us who are a little bit familiar with studying Jewish texts know is that the rabbis can take any text and completely pull it out of its simple meaning and use it in some way to teach what they want to teach. And that's been happening since before, 0 BCE. It's been happening in the early creations of Judaism and the rabbis. And what we call mystical Judaism is really those interpretations of Torah that are meant to try to aid people in having a direct experience of God, right? As opposed to talking about God or having God as just a character in a story or something that's out here. Mystical Judaism, everything that's about that part of our tradition, really seeks to interpret or use midrashim in a similar process of the way that our rabbis always have, but instead with a goal to deepen one's relationship and experience with God. And so in this week's Parsha, you'll see I want to offer a teaching from Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. This is a 18th, 19th century spiritual master from Berdichev, which is in the Ukraine, who has lots of beautiful, beautiful teachings that he draws on Kabbalah, which is kind of the 13th, 14th, 15th century body of work that is about this direct experience of God and trying to understand the cosmos. And he takes the very simple opening of this week's Parsha, which says, V'haya ekev tishmarun et hamishpatim. And it will be consequently, this word ekev, consequently, because you've listened to these these mitzvot, and you've observed and performed them, then Hashem, God, will safeguard for you the covenant and the kindness that he promised to your ancestors. So, right, at a very simple meaning, it's going on from the end of the last Parsha, and the Torah is just saying, and consequently, because you have been true to really hearing and understanding the mitzvot that are in the Torah and trying to practice them, things will go well for you, just like your ancestors. Really simple meaning, simple kind of kind of idea. But Rabbi Levi Yitzhak takes this word ekev, which means consequently, and he draws another meaning from it. And what he does is he draws the classical meaning that Rashi, 12th century famous Torah commentator, does, which is that akev also doesn't just mean consequently, but it means heel, like the heel of our foot. And in fact, the word, our ancestor Jacob, his name in Hebrew is Yaakov, which is connected to that root word akev, which means heel. And the way that that Yaakov is understood in his name, Jacob, is he starts out as a bit of a heel, meaning he's a, he lies, he is deceptive, and his whole journey in the Torah is about becoming a more upright person and person of integrity. And so how Rashi wants to translate akev here is he says, consequently, it's saying if you would observe the mitzvot, then things will go well for you. He says akev is because it's connected to heel. It says especially you should observe those mitzvot that you would normally trample under your heel. Those things in the Torah that you don't really see as being very significant, that's especially the things that you should pay attention to, right? And in some ways, it's a way to try to help people at that time be more attentive to being more Jewishly observant and more connected. That's Rashi's take. But Rabbi Levi Yitzhak takes it in a different direction. And he says that there are different ways that we connect to God. And these can be explained by parts of our body. our head, our rosh, is when we connect to God through our intellect, meaning we look at all of the incredible beauty of creation, the magnificence of the human body, of the earth, of everything that's in here. We, even through studying the science, we are blown away by how magnificent this world and creation is. And we can't help but feel and know, even with our mind, that there is a creator, an intelligence, a purpose behind all of it, because it's all so fantastic. How could it be otherwise? Right? So that's connecting to God through our intellect, through our mind. And that was a big way that the Rambam, or Maimonides, 13th, 12th century rabbi, teacher, doctor, talked about connecting to God, was intellectual. But then there are some of us that connect to God just through faith, just through faith. And this is what he likens to our heels or our feet, right? It's not so lofty as our heads to be able to look at the intellect, but somehow we just know. We just know intuitively that there is a sense of goodness, cosmic goodness and kindness in the world, that hope is possible. And we have faith, whether it's faith in humanity, faith in God, faith in this underlying connection that we all feel a part of. And it's the kind of thing of knowing that the sun is shining even on a cloudy day, right? We can't see the sun that's there, but we know it's there. And even if we can't think about with our minds the majesty of creation and connect to God through intellect, we sense intuitively that there's this presence, and we're able to hold on to that faith even when things are dark. And that is the heels, or the feet, that place of faith and connection. And he says our hands can go either way. We can raise our hands up, which signifies connecting to God through intellect. That's our love of God, is our hands. Or we can connect to God, putting our hands down towards our feet, feeling our groundedness on the earth, and that's connecting to God through faith. And so when it says, Bahaya ekev tishmarun, and consequently uses this word ekev, it's talking about connecting through faith. That ultimately, even though it's an important aspect in our tradition, that we are able to keep our minds open and our intellect questioning and open and trying to connect to the mystery without abdicating our minds. That's an essential part of our tradition. There's also a deep place, according to Levi Yitzchak, from connecting through intuition and through just knowing and being open. And so how we're going to bring this into our meditative practice is, there's two ways in meditation to connect to a sense of presence of God. And one of them we do, which is through becoming aware and present to everything that's happening in our moment-to-moment experience. We connect with our breath, we connect with our body sensations, we open to what is in front of us, the sounds that are around us. We are with what is. And in being with what is, we feel its aliveness, its energy. In a sense, we're being with what is with our intellect. Not that we're having to figure it out, but we're being able to be open and attentive to the energy and the aliveness of our moment-to-moment experience. But then there's another element that we've also practiced in meditation. We spent more time on our Sunday morning, focusing on this, which is that at the same time that we're open with what is, we're aware that our perception is only the tip of the iceberg, right? At the same time that you may come and see a volcano or a mountain that's coming out of the sea. I think even Mauna Loa in Hawaii, right? That you've got the sense of what we can see of the volcano, but we know that it's one of the biggest, the tallest peaks, not because of its height above the land, but it's one of the tallest peaks because it goes deep, 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 deep down into the ocean. And there's so much of the volcano that we can't see unless we were to dive really underwater and see the mass of the land. So that's also like our moment to moment perception. We can experience our breath, our body, what is in the moment. And yet there's some of us that knows intuitively that our perception is limited, that there's more depth and intricacy to even just the simple movement of the breath and the sensations in our body. And the deeper that we bring our attention, the more that we're open to that which is below the iceberg, the more that the more it starts to reveal itself to us, the more we start to tune into a level of energy, of divine presence that we may not have been as of aware of on just the level of the iceberg or the top of the volcano. So at the same time in our meditation that we are with what is, we're also open to what we're experiencing as only being the surface. And what's it like to bring an attitude of openness to our moment to moment experience? And that's the aspect of faith. That's the aspect of akev, that we may not perceive that depth right away, but just like knowing that the sun is shining when the clouds are in front, we also know that there is infinite depth there and we're open to it. Okay, so now we're going to take all of this very heady stuff and bring it into and we're going to attempt to practice it. And I want to really, remind everybody that when we practice meditation, there is no state that we're trying to achieve. There's no right way to do it. In the same way that if a personal trainer were to go ahead and give us a form of how to work out, that we just kind of do our best from where it is, and we're not going to do it wrong, but we may not, if we looked over at somebody else in the gym and we saw that they were doing it so much better than us, it doesn't make what we're doing any less right and any less part of our practice in the moment. So I want to just invite you to look at this as a place of practice. And we'll start it out with a melody, a nigun, something that we can sing. So just begin by finding a comfortable position that you can sit in for a period of time without shifting around too much. You want to kind of shift so maybe you're sitting a little bit on the top of your spine and your feet are grounded on the floor in your chair, and your spine doesn't have to be rigid, but you want to be generally sitting up straight, your shoulders relaxed. And I'll start the melody, and the melody is also a part of opening to this space. And I'm going to actually share a melody that is attributed to Rabbi Levi Yitzhak of Berdichev, whose Torah we learned today. In the whole Berdichev movement, the followers of Rabbi Levi Yitzhak, they have a rich musical tradition of sacred melody. So feel free to sing in your own space. You're muted. Nobody else can hear you. You can sing along with me. Alai, 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 alai. Ai, 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 lai, lai, lai. Alai, 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 alai. Alai, 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 alai. Ai, 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 Yidda-da, yidda-da, yidda. Yidda-da, yidda, yidda. Tiddy-da, yidda, 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 yidda. Yidda, 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 yidda. Eli, 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 Eli. Eli, 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 Eli. I, Eli, 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 Eli. Tiri, la, la, Eli, Eli, Eli. Eli, 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 Eli. I, Eli, 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 Eli. Ira, ia, ila, ila, ila. Ia, ila, ila, ia, ira, ira. Tirira, ia, ila, ila, ila. Ia, ila, ila, ia, ira, ira. Ia, ila, 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 ia. Eli, 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 Eli. I, Eli, 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 Eli. Tere, la, la, Eli, Eli, Eli. Eli, 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 Eli. I, Eli, 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 Eli. Tiri-ra, i-i-li-li-li. I-i-li-li-i-i-li. Tiri-ra, i-i-li-li-li. I-i-li-li-i-i-li. So with your eyes closed, notice the movement of your breath, noticing where the air enters your nostrils or your mouth, the way the body gently expands to make room for the inhale. Notice that place where the inhale reaches its maximum length and switches over to an exhale. Following the air out of the body on the exhale, noticing the body contract until that exhale reaches its maximum length and then switches over to an inhale. Following the cycle again, just making a decision that just for this short period of meditation together, you're just going to give all your attention to the present moment, to that movement of breath, and noticing all the accompanying sensations that go along with it. Breath is with us all the time. It sustains us, gives us life. And it's reliable, which is why it's a good place of focus to be in the present. And as you're aware of that inhale and exhale of breath, expand your attention to also include your body in space, the pressure of your bottom on the chair, the contact of your feet on the ground, the length of your legs from the bottom of your feet all the way up to the hips. Notice the distance between the bottom of your spine and the top of your head. The sensations in your belly and your back as you inhale and exhale. Notice the way the arms hang out of your shoulder sockets, the resting place of your hands, the distance between your ears, and then the sensation of the air as it touches your face. See if your awareness and attention can be open enough to perceive all those sensations in your body from your toes to your head at the same time that you notice the breath going in and out. And also let all the sounds in the room or outside your room be also a part of this moment to moment experience. They can be present along with the breath and the sensations in the body. Nothing is a distraction. Everything is part of the present moment. And the practice at this point is to allow yourself to be present with breath, to be noticing that movement of breath, and as much of the sensations in your body and the sounds in the room and anything that arises in your moment to moment experience, to just be with. And the more that you are able to sense the incredible amount of information, sensory input that we're present to moment by moment, the very ability to be conscious that every cell, everything in the body is working to support life and awareness and presence. And then the more that you're open to the sounds of birds outside or life beyond you and your body, and you're also aware of the intricacy and the myriad expressions of data and information and life that's necessary to support this entire creation. You may feel more connected to your experience. It's your presence and your intellect that helps you be invested in being with this moment to moment experience, not needing distractions or input other than what is here. And once you're as present as much as you can be with breath and body and everything in your field of experience, consider that all of it is only the tip of the iceberg, is only the part of the volcano that we can see, but that everything in our experience, breath, body, sounds, has infinite depth, that everything has in its root the infinite source of life. the Makor HaChaim. And without creating an image in our mind of what that depth looks like beyond our experience, let your sense of faith or intuition that there is more than what we can experience create a sense of openness and willingness to take in and be with even more than what presents itself to us. So those are the two wings of our practice. Being with what is and as an expansive as way as possible, and being open to that which is even beyond our perception, that place of faith. I'm going to be quiet for the next period of time, about 10 minutes. And the invitation is just to practice these two wings. If you find yourself distracted by a thought about a world or concept that is not in this moment, here and there, as soon as you notice yourself being in that particular dream world, just bring your attention back to breath, ground it with breath, and begin to expand those sensations in the body that go along with the breath from head to toe. The world beyond us, the sounds, the air that touches our face, being aware of all of it. And then the openness to that which we can perceive. And you may have to come back again and again and again. And that is the practice of teshuvah, of returning to what is real, what is deep, what is true. And we may have to do it 100 times in the next 10 minutes, and that's okay. So before we open up for questions or comments, discussion, just want to offer some thoughts, reminders for those of us who have been meditating for some time, but also some thoughts for those who are either newer to our group or newer to meditation, which is um, that we become what we practice. So when we talk about meditation as practice, the question is always practice for what, right? And in a sense, it's practice for life. So the more that in a period of 20 minutes or 30 minutes, we practice being with our moment to moment experience, being open to that which we can't perceive, the translation is that in our lives, we have the ability to be more present with other people, more present with experiences instead of being distracted by this or that. When we hear other people talking and saying ideas, we may not be so reactive because we may be open that there's more to the iceberg than we're perceiving, right? There's more behind where they're coming from. And so just kind of that orientation of, oh, maybe there's more here. I might ask some questions. I might, be more open to experiencing. So the idea is that as we are able to practice this on a regular basis, when we don't have distractions, right, just through closing our eyes, paying attention just to the moment, the more that we start to ingrain in our own kind of neural networks a way of being in the world that then translates interpersonally into all kinds of things that we're experiencing. Other thoughts about either the teaching at the beginning or the practice itself? Nice to see those folks who entered on in mid, Ellen, Gecht, and Sergio, Audrey. Welcome, Miriam Khan.
תודה רבה.
Thank you. So if you'd like to speak, just feel free to either just raise your hand. I can see everybody, or post it, unmute yourself.
I'll go. Good morning, everyone. That was beautiful, Rabbi. And we were at the beach, whatever day, Sunday, and everything you were talking about, how we could connect through our intellect, through our faith, and through our intuition. The beach is such a great place for me to see all of that there, The sand is grounding, the waves are grounding, but they're also like, there's faith, that they're going to keep coming back and forth, and I know it has to do with the moon and the gravitation, but I see God so much when I'm at the beach. My faith just seems like it's all over the place. And then I'll just end with when the pelicans come over, you see one or two, they're just such majestic animals to me. But then when they come in that formation, there's just something so, I don't know, I sense God, the way how animals, mostly I see it in nature and with the animals out in nature. It was just so cool to watch them. And it was very grounding as well. So just came to mind when you were saying all that. Thank you.
Roger. Yeah, there's something very uncomplicated about being in nature. There's a lot of intricacy and complexity that we can be attentive to, but there's also everything seems to follow its own nature, whether that's the birds or the ocean, or even people, playing in the sand and going in. There's kind of a more natural sense of humanity when it's not always operating within these societal structures, which aren't always as in tune with what our natural rhythms are. Yeah, Ellen, you had something to share. No, Ellen Prince.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Okay. I've been listening to Daniel Matt, who is doing a 3-part series through CSP. And I guess this is more of a question. And by the way, Audrey, so very strange that this morning, that's all I was thinking about was the beach and the birds that come about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So I just had to throw that out. I mean, that was a big thing for some reason when I'm just laying in bed this morning. And he talked about, and Daniel Matt, who wrote, you can correct me, Rabbi, but translation of the Zohar and Kabbalah, talking about how we were not allowed to study Kabbalah at one point because they were worried, because I was always wondering why, and I found out. They were worried that people who studied Kabbalah and went into the mystical part of the religion could lose their minds. This is what he said. And my question is, which may sound a little bit strange, can you meditate so deeply to where you find yourself in that kind of state? I
Yes.
mean, okay, the answer is yes. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it also depends on what kind of meditative techniques you do. There's this aspect of there's theologians will kind of relate to God in two different aspects: the transcendent and the immanent. Right? The immanent aspect of God is the divine that we experience in the world, in ourselves, in each other, in nature, in all of that. And that kind of in Kabbalah and in Judaism, that aspect of God is referred to as Shekhinah, right? Shekhinah coming from the word shachan, which means to dwell, or that which dwells in the world. And then there's the aspect of God which is transcendent, which is the beyond what we're experiencing with our senses. That's that infinite nature of God that isn't just relegated to the natural world and our experience, but goes into other dimensions of experience beyond the physical world, right? And as human beings, we are the human animals that have that experience the world through our senses, like every other animal that does. And in that, there's this dimension of consciousness that is also able to appreciate and notice that infinite presence as it dwells within nature. That's why you can see a sunset be at the beach or a sunset at the ocean and have a sense of almost like transcendence, even though you're experiencing God within the nature that's there. It's almost like it's peeking through. And then there's that aspect of God which is beyond, which is transcendent. And if you're doing a meditative practice very deeply, and we're talking hours on, you know, maybe 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the evening, um, very intensely, that's focused on that transcendent aspect of God, that which is not in the physical world, but that which you're tapping into because as human beings, we have access to all of these dimensions of reality. Then there is a possibility of losing your grounding and connection to this world, to here, where you would forget your zip code, you know, or whatever it is. And you know, certainly that's always, you know, when we kind of right now there is a new resurgence right now in psychedelic drugs for healing, for working with people with trauma. It's being looked at and done in ways that are very monitored and with professionals. But there's always been a countercultural aspect of it where it's being done without that as well. And so the fear that always and the caution that's always with those experiences of something chemical, not even just meditative, that takes us out of kind of the grounding and experience of the world, is that people are going to have a hard time finding their way back. And that certainly has been, there have been those cases. So I think that's how I relate to that caution in Kabbalah. So it says, you know, you have to be 40 years old to study Kabbalah. And essentially what the rabbis are saying, you have to be grounded in the world. You have to have a family. You have to have things that are make you want to be in the world and not, you know, not wanting to leave.
So when you die, is that when the separation occurs?
Well, certainly when we die, at least, and I don't have any personal experience of this, so I'm just, you know, I'm just speaking from what I think and what my experience. For sure, we're not going to have a sensory experience of the world anymore, because my own understanding of our own science is that what we experience of the world through our senses is intimately connected to our very concrete physical bodies. So if we are also attentive to a dimension of our own being that's not just, that doesn't experience the world just through our bodies, but also can experience more of this transcendent aspect of God, then that's where our tradition kind of opens and says, the story is not over at death of the body. It continues because we have this dimension of our own being and our own experience, even here while we're alive, that goes beyond the sensory. And so the question then becomes, what's that aspect that continues? And right, there's a lot of Kabbalah, there's Gilgulim, reincarnation. We come back in different ways, that we, other theories that we continue on in other dimensions of reality and existence that aren't actually in different geographical locations than this world, but just on different planes of consciousness. That's a whole place of exploration that you can go. But I think, Miriam, that the sense it's related to this conversation, in that it kind of connects into that capacity we have for transcendent experience even here and now.
So when you're talking about 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in meditation, do you get further into it?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, and I will, and again, it depends on how you practice. If we're practicing, let's say that we're practicing the way that we were practicing this morning, which is still very much grounded in breath and body and sensory experience, but also open to that which is beyond, we will definitely experience different dimensions of existence and reality. And that's if you have the opportunity to go on a meditation retreat, especially if either a 4, 5, or even 10-day retreat, where you're pretty much meditating every day. You might, not always be sitting, but continuing the meditation through walking and then sitting and eating. You will definitely experience more of those deeper levels of reality because you're just paying attention to what is here and now in a more sustained period. On our meditation retreat, which will be January 3rd through 5th, 2025, we just go away for a weekend. But even then, even just having a little bit more sustained practice for a weekend, you'll find a deepening of experience that we've never experienced outside of that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any last comments before we close for the morning? Maury.
Thank you, Rabbi Kavod. And when you're talking, it makes me think, I'm thinking about anger and being angry and things in the world that I have that are big things that are reasonable to be angry about. But then why do I hold on to these petty annoyances? And I've tried to imagine myself as you speak, be able to let go. I can't imagine that. I don't feel how the rest of you feel. To be able to be free of petty annoyances, of petty emotions. I don't know. This is part of what comes to me when I sit with the group, but
Yeah. I don't think it's interesting when we talk about petty annoyances and what those are. But in some sense, I'll say I think there's a way that we never get beyond it, and there's a way that we absolutely get beyond it. And I think what it has everything to do with what we were practicing this morning, which is being with and being open to what is beyond. So when we're experiencing, let's just call it an annoyance, because the petty is the judgment afterwards. Like I'm being annoyed, but I'm realizing that it's not actually that such a big deal, but I'm getting annoyed. But when I'm getting annoyed in the moment, and if I look at that experience, there's usually an emotional experience that goes along with it, whether, and maybe it's a physical experience. Maybe if we really pay attention to it as we get annoyed, we notice that there may be a tightening, like a contracting in our body. And we also will notice that there's always a story that goes along with it. There's always a story that is narrating why we should be annoyed in this moment, or whatever it is. So-and-so is doing that, or this is happening. Usually it's that we have certain expectations that aren't being fulfilled in a certain way. But whatever it is, we have a story with it. So what this practice leads to is the ability to be with the experience of the annoyance without reacting, but to notice, okay, there's contraction in my body, there's a story, there's an expectation. And as soon as I notice the story, instead of being completely in the middle of the story, right? As soon as I notice that I'm holding this narrative, then I have the opportunity to hold it a little bit more lightly. Do I want this story? What's is it really worth holding on to? No, it's not worth it. I'm going to let it go. And sometimes we may even have that moment of awareness of this isn't so important, but it's really grabbing me. Then I try to be with that. What is it that I'm holding on to, wanting to be so angry? What about the story is so compelling? And so then the moment of the annoyance becomes this opportunity for self-reflection and self-understanding. And usually the more that we begin to have that understanding, the more that those annoyances soften. And it doesn't mean that they're not going to go away, but it means that we're not going to be as hooked by them. They're not going to be so much, we're going to have a little bit more space when they come up. And we get to choose how we're going to how we're going to respond, and it becomes easier to just let it go. So that's kind of what we have the opportunity to through the practice. The trick always is how do we have enough presence of mind when we're aware to even decide, I'm going to observe this. I'm going to notice how it feels in my body. I'm going to notice the story. That's a choice. And you have to have enough presence of mind to choose that, as opposed to just react from it and you know, be in it. And that's what the meditation practice has to offer, is more moments of that presence of mind.
Because it's very freeing to let go of those feelings. It's
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
a great feeling of freedom.
Right. You feel that contraction that comes with it, and then immediately you just get to let it go. You know, feel that contraction, let it go. You know.
Well put, Rabbi.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for another wonderful Tuesday morning. Want to remind everybody who is, you know, either connected to Temple Bethel or wants to be connected to Temple Bethel. We have our big hot August nights party this Saturday night. Opportunity to notice holiness and joy and celebration, and music and food. So I hope to see some of you there.
And I just want to quickly, what I was trying to say before, those on the meditation committee, 4:30 this afternoon in the library. We have lots to talk about.
And anybody's welcome who's interested in bringing more meditative programming to Temple Bethel. All right, take care, everybody.
Thank you.